Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today our guest is Brian Gill. Thanks for being on the show, Brian.
Thank you, Whitney. It's a pleasure, man.
Brian has been helping companies dig out of data-related disasters for 20 years. He currently is the CEO of Gillware Data Recovery and is a co-founder of Tetra Defense. Tetra Defense assists businesses that are victims of ransomware and data breaches and provides ongoing IT risk mitigation. Brian, welcome to the show. I'm grateful for your time. I thought it was funny. We were just having some issues and Zoom was acting up in a big way for me. And we came back and it's working now. And Brian said, I think China or somebody, is hacking in right now. And I said, well, I know they're scared because I'm talking to you. So grateful for your time, Brian. And, because in this business, we deal with so much crucial data, right? I mean, so much information that's very personal information for so many investors. It's so common for us to have 100 to 150 investors in one deal.
Right. And you have all kinds of tax information and, more than that, you're moving money around to those 150 people. And,
that's right.
Your reputation means everything. And
that's right.
When you're pooling a group of investors and you've got a reputation of success, you'd hate to see that reputation get flushed down the toilet because a bunch of wires went sideways, or
that's
because you lost somebody's personal information to a hacker who steals their identity. How
that's
likely
a hard conversation right there. I never want that to happen where I have to have that conversation with an investor, give them a call to say, I'm sorry, I've lost all your information, or I'm not sure if it's worse or not, but that your money has, we don't know where your money is, Brian, I mean, that's horrible, right? Give us a little more about your background, Brian, and what you do for people like us. And let's jump into some of those issues that we hope never happens and how you, can help people like us to keep them from happening.
So I was a computer scientist, and about 20 years ago, I started a service company with some business partners called Gillware Data Recovery. And what we do back in the day, what we did was primarily help small businesses out of normal traditional disasters. There was a flood in a data center, lightning strike, and a server got smoked, or a laptop or desktop got smoked, and they didn't have adequate backups. They needed the data. And then we have mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, people like that, tinkerers, who would make temporary repairs to those devices, get people their own, reunite them with their data. About 6 years ago, we started seeing this trickle of ransomware, which is when a criminal syndicate or just a lone wolf bad guy hacks into a business network, encrypts all the data, steals all the data, and then tries to monetize that event by essentially all your data is encrypted. You got to pay them to get access to your own stuff. And sometimes it is, hey, if you don't pay me, I'm going to post all this stuff up to the web. And that just happened, I think, to a university in Nevada just a couple of weeks ago, where they decided not to pay a ransom. And the bad guys basically released all the students' personal information, financial information.
Wow.
So it's not just pay me for your own stuff, pay me or I'm going to blow up your business and blow up your reputation, right? So we started seeing a trickle of this about 6 years ago, and it's been exponentially growing. Almost every quarter we see about twice as much as the previous quarter, and that has not stopped. About 5 years ago now, we started a company called Gillware Digital Forensics with a big intent on helping specifically do what's called incident response or cyber incident response, helping companies not just get the data, but negotiate cryptocurrency deals with bad guys, perform the logistics, working with privacy councils on how they're going to disclose this to their clients, how they're going to disclose this to their employees, if they're going to have to disclose this to some regulatory body. Because and then also solving the problem ongoing and providing risk consulting. So not taking over their entire IT operations, but acting as essentially a third-party watchdog to, intermittently jump in once a month, making sure these businesses are doing the right things.
Yeah, well, I want to make sure we're doing the right thing. At least the listener knows as well. Those that are operating this kind of business and have access to so much personal information for so many investors, but also for the investor listening, it's just something to think about. When you're transferring your information, transferring funds, you want to know that operator is thinking through these things, right? And has some of these things in place.
Savvy consumers are going to be demanding that. They're going to want to know, hey, show me your IT security. Show me how you protect your data. And the most savvy of these, these investors. Now, obviously, probably 80% of them aren't asking those questions, but that's going to be a trend. So you're going to need, as a real estate syndication type person, you're going to need to develop your response to this.
Okay, so let's jump in there, Brian, and I don't even know where to start, honestly. We do some things, but I want you just to walk us through a little bit some things we need to be thinking about to protect that data.
Well, one thing I was saying is,
jump into. I'd love for us to touch on the wiring stuff as well. It's such an important part of our business. But let's think about the data. How do we protect that?
Yeah, I mean, so it comes down to protecting your network. So most of us are going to have either a home network because of COVID. I'm at home right now. Or they're going to have a small business network for their 5 or 6 employees. And this, a lot of these big real estate companies making these massive deals only have a dozen employees. One of the biggest ones here in Dane County, where I'm from, it's a family company of 5 or 6 people, and they own $100+ million worth of stuff, right? These are not large people-wise organizations, but they're very commonly targeted. This is the first thing to understand, is the bad guys are freaking smart. They're really, really smart. They're not just smart with computers. They're trying to target companies that have weak IT and move lots of money around. So this is a prime target, you guys, and that's a big, big problem. And we have a lot of clients in your vertical. So what do we got to do? First thing we got to always do is think hard about user authentication, how we log into stuff. It is the year 2020, almost 2021. And if you are logging into stuff with a username and a password, and that's it, and you got like 3 passwords that you use everywhere, and it's like the name of your dog, the street you grew up on, you are going to get hacked. It is a guarantee. You have to have 2-factor authentication, or even better, you can spend about $50, buy a little thing called a YubiKey up on Amazon that will do basically single sign-on, or what's called U2F or UFA, which is essentially, it's replacing this whole password thing. If you want to log into stuff, you got to have this physical key. The bad guys who are overseas.
What do you call that?
It's called a YubiKey. It's one vendor that I appreciate. It's YUBIKEY. I have no relationship with them at all. I'm not a paid sponsor or anything, but the reason I like it is it's cheap. If you got 5 or 6 employees or 2 or 3 kids, you buy these things. And when you go to sign up for websites and things, 80% are going to support these new security protocols, and it's going to handle login for you. It's actually pretty darn convenient. And the only trade-off is don't lose your key. Don't put it through the wash. Put it on your actual keychain. That's what I do. My keys are in my pocket. I got it on. It's shaped like a key. It fits on a keychain, and it works for your phone. It works. I'm going to log into something on my smartphone. It talks near-field communication to my smartphone, logs me into everything. And if you don't have my key, you're not getting in. It's that simple. There's no password to hack.
Nice. So the problem then is not losing that key, right?
Right. So buy 2 of them, back them up, and you should be fine. And if you don't have that, you're using username and passwords, that's fine. But you have to use multi-factor authentication, ideally like a rotating digit code. A lot of us are starting to see, like the banks especially, like when you go to log into your bank, it's like, okay, we're going to send you an SMS to verify that you're actually you. That's a second factor of authentication. It's not a particularly good one. It's easier than you think, much easier than you think, to basically spoof a SIM and actually get access to those SMSs. And the worst method of multi-factor is email. Oh yeah, like I don't have my thing, email me for the second factor. We have to assume that your email got hacked. We have to think about these scenarios, okay? If your email gets hacked, what are the bad guys going to be able to do? So again, to log into your email, we got to have this multi-factor authentication too. And it's, the biggest problem is the bad guys are super smart, and they might not try to ransomware you. They might say, okay, I understand why I hacked this person in the first place. They're doing a bunch of major real estate deals. They're going to set up a bunch of email forwarding rules. Every time you get an email from one of your clients, they're going to get CC'd on it. And as soon as they see the wire information start firing off, that's when they're going to hijack that communication. And they might even send an email from you, legitimately from you. That's the same email you are going to send them, or very, very similar. And it's going to have a different wire.
Yeah, I've heard horror stories of this exact thing happening. Them, getting into someone's email, changing the wiring instructions that's being sent out, and it's done before the operator even knows it.
Well, again, the good news there is the banking system's a little slow, right? It takes a few days for all those wires to clear. But the problem is, as your client is emailing you, well, first of all, you emailed the client and said, "Got it, great, lovely. We'll talk in a couple weeks." So you might not get a response, but again, you might be like, well, geez, why hasn't that guy sent the wire yet? And you might try to send them an email, and again, they're going to do what they can do to mitigate your ability to do that. And they're going to try. So again, when it comes to wires, you got to use the verbal. You got to verbally confirm these things. You've got to verbally confirm the banks, and you got to ignore the phone number that's in the email. If you think that these bad guys are not capable of, putting a bad phone number in there so that when you call to confirm everything that they're not talking, and again, they might sound a little different, but if you're putting together a deal, 150 people and some of them you haven't met, it's like,
right,
it may not work. So,
yeah.
But again, with wires, try not to use email as the only way that you confirm the fact that you're wiring around $10, $25, $50,000.
Yeah.
Pick up the phone, hire an assistant to do that.
Yeah, before we jump into the wiring information stuff, I want to go back to just like the email and those things a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, most of our emails are Gmail, right? And it's, it's not going to be that difficult for most people, especially like yourself. I mean, if you're that skilled, at these things, to be able to get into a Gmail account or something like that. And there's such crucial information there.
So
go ahead.
Yeah, so with Gmail especially, you can set up your Gmail to do multi-factor authentication, and you should. And again, Gmail fully supports all the new FIDO protocols that I was talking about. So you can buy that YubiKey. That's how you log into your Gmail. And when you do that, it actually becomes incredibly difficult for even a super skilled bad guy to penetrate that email. And Microsoft has similar things. So you've got to set up something other than username and passwords for sure.
How does the system recognize that YubiKey? Like computer or phone? How does it know that?
It's a little tiny thing. It looks like a key. It actually has like a USB. It looks like a little USB stick. You can plug it in to your actual laptop or desktop, and then when you go to log in to something, you need to basically push a button on the key, and then it will basically tell that other service, hey, Whitney's logging in now. And they actually do, and I don't want to talk about all the mechanics and all the,
sure,
your audience doesn't care, but it basically, if you don't have that key, you are not getting in, and you need to physically have that key in your possession. You need to push the button, right? With the cell phones, it talks near field communication, NFC, and it's the same thing. When you're on your phone, I'm trying to log into my Gmail, you push the button, and it does that kind of wireless handshake.
Nice. Okay. No, that's awesome. Well, one thing on that though, what about tools like Lastpass or 1Password?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are good tools. They're going to make better passwords than you make. The problem is if you have a weak password to protect your LastPass, then you're creating basically a single honeypot.
Yeah.
And if you're storing that honeypot up on the web, that's an incredibly bad idea in my opinion.
Yeah.
So a lot of people host their LastPass like up on a cloud service. And that is an incredibly bad idea. You should have again, if I had to have one, you can have these. There's another USB. There's a product called Unicorn. It's a USB stick. It has like you can put a 6-digit physical password on it to unlock it. It's fully encrypted. So you could put your Lastpass on something like that. So even if you were like walking through the airport and dropped it, it's like, well, the bad guys are not going to get at it. So again, but if you're going to have one of those, have an incredibly strong password to authenticate into the Lastpass or the KeyPass. They're certainly better at making passwords than you. But I prefer, again, the next generation of products to help with this is one of the vendors is called YubiKey, and it's just easier in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely going to look them up personally. One thing though that is that's so helpful with something like LastPass or OnePass, some of those systems, is being able to share a password while it's encrypted. So I could share it with a team member and they can't actually see it. So I can restrict access to certain platforms. Do you have a way to do that?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different SSO or single sign-on things, and a lot of them have all these password sharing things. And, we just have to be very, very careful. As we dial up convenience, sometimes there's security trade-offs. And we just need to always make sure, and this is tough when you're like a real estate guy in maybe his like mid-60s, right? And you have to learn enough about this stuff to be dangerous. And it's not everybody's favorite topic, but, you don't want to watch your whole business get flushed down the toilet because you trusted some IT guy that didn't set things up right.
Right. So user authentication, that's great stuff. Anything on that before we move to some as a wiring fraud?
Yeah. I mean, before we get there, again, I just want to spend like 30 seconds on a handful of other topics.
Please.
People can look this up on their own. You got to audit your backups. So your backups, a lot of times when we're talking, especially to these small real estate companies, yeah, we got it backed up. We've got a USB plug that we plugged in, and all the data go from here to there. It's like, that's not a backup. You're in the same network. You're in the same building. That's not a backup. Your data needs to get backed up to a completely different network. And again, I'm talking about a cloud backup. If all your data is up in the cloud, you need to do a cloud-to-cloud backup. You need to have different networks, network segmentation. All good backups assume that this network got hacked someday. That's the mindset we have to develop is, let's assume this network got hacked. How safe are we going to be when that happens? How are we going to detect that? What is the worst case scenario? If we don't want to get held ransom for our own data, it is simple. Have your data in an automated fashion move to a completely different network with a completely different level of network authentication, i.e. usernames and passwords. And again, there's got to be a multi-factor authentication there. So now we're making it exponentially harder for the bad guys. They can't just hack into one network, delete all the backups, encrypt all the primary, and hold your ransom, right? The second thing is you need to have a real big boy firewall. A lot of people, especially now because of COVID, are at home and they're literally just plugged into their cable modem doing $10 million real estate deals. If this is you, you're a bad human. Stop it. Gotta stop it. You seriously gotta stop it. It's just, you're just going to get completely crushed. You're funding terrorism. You got to really check yourself. You can't be doing $10 million real estate deals plugged into a cable modem, people. Cannot do it. You got to have a real firewall. And again, this does not have to be expensive. There's a company called Eero, E-E-R-O. I think Amazon bought them. They make a excellent wireless mesh network for your house. That's beautiful. I love it. It also, you can pay them $100 a year, and that hardware appliance becomes a real big boy firewall. And what that means is people can't just sit there and try to attack your computers because you have a firewall in front of that that's saying, I don't know who you are, Romanian IP address, go away. They don't even get to that point where they're going to be trying to log in as you because you've got a firewall in between. That firewall, you guessed it, should have two-factor authentication, especially if you're like trying to RDP into your box in the network. If you can just RDP onto your box and work without going through a firewall VPN that's going to do multi-factor authentication, then we got a big problem. And so email security, Phishing is crazy. These people are smart. You think you're smart. You're too smart to fall for phishing. You're wrong. They get everybody. So again, the ego is a big problem with this kind of thing. People think, oh, there's no way that could happen to me. It could totally happen to you. The people that get crushed by this stuff are really smart, really successful people. So and that's with phishing. So there's a service that I like. There's actually a bunch of different services that you can do. There's a service that I like called Iron Scales. It's pretty inexpensive. Buy it from your MSP. It's basically like a crowdsourced phishing email scanner. So as a whole bunch of other people flag these email addresses as kind of bad or these messages as fraudulent or phishing, they will essentially never show up in your inbox to begin with. So that's a product called Iron Scales I really like for email security. I guess the very, very last thing is, don't let your kids log on to your work computer and install a bunch of weird software. It sounds simple, but sometimes, we have a laptop and your kid wants to jump on and they want to download some weird program or something. And, it very well just could have some backdoors and phishing and even things like TikTok. People are saying, there was a lot of security concerns that the U.S. government had about TikTok because there's all kinds of weird stuff that tool is doing. And nobody quite understands why. And that's like a really big example of it, but wouldn't take much to make some little kid's program and have it be free. And then you install it on your computer and push the button that says, yep, install this software, please. It's fine. And then, oh, by the way, it's scanning your hard drive and shipping your stuff off to, Bangladesh.
Yeah.
So you gotta, don't let anybody use your work computer.
I was just trying to sign up for this thing the other day that somebody invited me to. I thought it seemed like a great way to meet new investors and whatnot. And through the process, it says, you're giving access to this program to all of you. I mean, it says you're giving permission for them to copy all of your contacts, all their addresses, all their phone. It tells you this, all their addresses, their phone numbers, and it says like any information about that. Like it just lays it out there, and I'm like, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. We're not going to do that.
They don't always warn you, especially if the software was designed to steal it without telling you. They're definitely not going to warn you on that.
Right.
So again, I find it's just easy, especially because so many of us are working from home. And, the kids want to jump on and they see you doing stuff on your computer and it's like, yeah, what's the harm? It's like, no, this is this is daddy's work computer. No, you can't install your weird software packages on it.
Yeah. What about when you were talking about earlier about cloud backup, what's your recommendation there? Most of us are probably using Google, right? Google Cloud or whatever, is that a big no-no?
Again, Google's good company, right? Or Alphabet as they're known now. There's definitely a handful of cloud service providers that are very well known and very well secured, but you have to turn the security on, and that's where we see most of the problems. Like AWS is amazing. You can configure AWS a million different ways for security, but if you don't take advantage of those things, then it doesn't really matter. It's more about the human that's configuring it than it is about the provider. And, especially as a small real estate business, you should not be doing this yourself. You should be hiring a managed service provider with a security pedigree. And they're not going to be the cheapest one in town. If you picked your MSP because they had the cheapest rates and you bring them in when the world burns down exclusively, well, then you're doing it wrong. You need to pay them a small amount of money every month to manage your security and your systems. As far as backups go, and again, this is not the kind of thing that if I'm a real estate mogul, I'm going to be doing. But, most of us are on-prem servers or cloud servers or are running virtual these days. There's a great company called Veeam that makes an amazing backup utility, and then you can configure it to push to something like AWS. There's another wonderful company called StorageCraft out of Draper, Utah that makes some really excellent backup stuff as well. But again, it's not as much about the provider as it is about the human setting it up.
Okay, no, that's awesome, and we're about out of time, Brian. This is some such good information, but I want you to be able to elaborate on wiring fraud and us, as operators, how we can take steps to prevent that.
Yeah, so it just, we got to double, triple, quadruple check these things, and you've got to add whatever efficiency that you had by just, sending 150 emails saying, please wire this over here. We need to shred some of that efficiency. We need to get more inefficient. We need to take our time here. We need to verbally tell our clients, like, I will never email you you exclusively telling you to wire money somewhere. Just tell them that. I'm always going to have me or one of my staff call you to do a verbal verification. Always. Because and again, we just went from a negative to a positive. That client,
Right.
the amount of trust that they're going to have in you just went up, right? Because you're telling them, I don't exclusively trust email because I have a obligation to protect your money and make sure that it gets into this real estate project, right? We want to make sure that we're familiar with the banks, that your clients, they know how to verify it's real. We got to slow down is the biggest thing. And again, most of the problems can be prevented by having dramatically increased email security, dramatically increased user authentication. Most of these hacks start with email. So don't overly rely on email, and lock down how you and your staff log into email. And again, one of the other crazy things, and again, I don't want to go way too far down the rabbit hole, but if you had Whitney Sewell realestate.com and you're emailing your clients from that, it is so simple to set up a very similar domain with real estate with the letter 3 backwards or something, right? And be emailing people. So don't put your clients' information anywhere on the web. Don't put any of your high net worth clients or partnerships on your website. Be pretty smart about it all. And LinkedIn is another one. A lot of you folks are using LinkedIn quite a bit to communicate and use LinkedIn Messenger, things like that. You got to multi-factor into your LinkedIn. You got to be suspicious about LinkedIn. Again, my biggest advice is to slow down.
No, that's awesome. So important, man. So important, especially the wiring stuff. I love just how you talk about slow down. Convenience really causes problems a lot of times in thinking about how to be more convenient as opposed to taking those extra steps. And even that phone call. So, letting investors know that someone from the team is going to call you to verify the wiring instructions before you send a wire. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we're doing that, could we email it to them right then and say, even while we're on the phone and say, we're just verifying that you received the correct wiring instructions before we do this or something.
Yeah. And again, you might even consider, moving to a secure box.net account or a secure, file sharing app instead of an email attachment. Because again, one of the problems with email is that information can usually just sit in your inbox or sit in your archive for 7 years. Might be a better way to actually have a secure file sharing cloud.
And you said that's box.net?
Well, that's one of them. There's a million of them. I mean, and again, but this is the kind of thing I'd be relying on my MSP for.
Right.
How can I securely share these wiring instructions with my client? And the more we can get away from email, the better. Because it really is, when we investigate all these breaches and all these hacks and all these data thefts and all these ransomware events, probably my rough guess is 75% of them originate with email. We got to be really, really cognizant and about not using it when we can.
Awesome, Brian. Well, unfortunately, we are running way low on time. Maybe we'll probably have to have you back sometime in the near future so we can dive into some more of these things. It's such an important topic, but a few more questions quickly, Brian. I believe every entrepreneur or business owner has to have a high level of self-discipline to be successful. And how have you gained that high level of self-discipline?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it comes from knowing how many hours there are in the day, especially when we got our families running around. As we get older, we have to wake up every day with a certain amount of intent, thinking about what we're going to accomplish and holding ourselves accountable to accomplish those one or two or three things and not have it be 17. For me, I've really had to learn how to say no, and I've had to learn how to delegate, because, if I wake up with 17 things to accomplish, it's just not going to get done. It's going to grow and grow and grow. And then I'm going to be buried under a mountain of my own tasks. It's just, you've got to, what am I doing today? 1, 2, 3, or 4 things. That's it. Don't go to bed till they're done, and just behaving that way, you can kind of develop that discipline. At least that's how I did it.
I like that. What you said, we have to wake up every day with a certain level of intent. I like that. What are a couple habits that you have that you're disciplined about doing, say on a daily basis, that have helped you achieve success?
Yeah, I mean, I just use, again, my Outlook calendar, right? Like, I have scheduled one-on-ones or small team meetings with my team, and they start on time, they end on time. We do them at least once a week, and those times are blocked off, and phone is off, and kids are doing something, and like, I always am going to have that time with my teams, right? And so much of my success, and I imagine it's similar in your world, it comes from team building, hiring the right people, meeting the right people, treating them well, maintaining those relationships. If you don't start with the right team, and if you don't, some of the negative things about running businesses and doing deals is, you got to cut people out sometimes that are not the right kind of people, and that can be painful. But your job as the person in charge of the organization or in charge of the deal is to determine who's going to be members of the tribe here, right? And
for sure,
if you're not going to do it, who's gonna? So that sometimes that means making some hard decisions.
What's a way you've recently improved your business that we could apply to ours?
It's a great question. I think maybe it's not as far as the business goes, because, again, some of this crazy stuff that just popped into my head has no applicability to your world. But, I just think as I get older, as I get more success, I keep slowing down. We'll go back to it, and just thinking about, okay, this guy, whether it's an employee or client, like, they want us to do a certain project, or, one of my employees wants us to do a certain project, and not always saying, yeah, let's go do that, but really just being like, really, why should we do that? And then at the end of that half hour, maybe we still are going to go do that, but now I'm bought in, right? And maybe I've shot some holes in it that person's got to go back and do their homework and come back with something a little better. And, back in the day, especially when I was in my 20s and running around in kind of more of a tech startup mode, and somebody had an idea, and it's like, do that and do that and do that and do that and do that. And again, we had a lot of success. We also had probably too many failures too. Like, you don't want every deal. You don't want every investor. Slow down,
Love that. Yeah, no, great answer, Brian. Tell me the number one thing that's contributed to your success.
Just knowing myself, what my strengths are, what my weaknesses are, what I'm good at. And again, I've had especially in my youth, I had maybe an overly healthy ego, but not becoming cocky, being confident, but understanding what I do and what my company does and our role in assisting our clients. It just helps make all the other decisions so much easier the more you understand what your role in all this is. You don't need to fret over all these things because you're so confident in your role in society, your role in the company, your role in the microverse. So when it comes to all these 15 different decisions we got to make every day, it just becomes so much easier. Like, in the early days, when you don't really have that confidence, when this is all just an idea, like this whole, like, we save data for people and help businesses out of data disasters, like this was in the ether 21 years ago, right? I mean, it's hard to have that confidence when you're in that ether and you've helped nobody. 21 years ago, I helped nobody. And it's hard to have that confidence and know your role in the universe because it's just a concept. So, you got to have some amount of success to have it snowball,
And commitment in the beginning, no doubt.
Oh, a lot of long hours. You got to make up for all those mistakes you're going to make.
How do you like to give back?
Yeah, I mean, I like to youth. I coach a lot of youth sports with my sons when I can. I've been on a handful of nonprofit boards. My wife and I, my wife's a doctor at a children's hospital here. We like to attend and go to a lot of various, fundraisers and fundraising activities for the children's hospital. I mean, you can't really pick a better charity than sick children.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff that the pediatric community sees, it just, no matter how bad my day is, nobody died. Some of the stuff that they see just will break your heart. So I like to support my wife and her endeavors.
Nice. No, that's I love that. That's awesome, Brian. Appreciate you giving back in that way, and a great show, man. I'm just so grateful to have met you personally, and just so the listeners can meet you as well, and realize how big a risk their data is at, and there's all the investor information and personal information to their funds, doing the wire transfers, and you just exposed a lot of that, I think, to listeners and myself, and tell them how they can get in touch with you and learn more about this.
Yeah, so a couple of resources. I have an MSP buyer's guide up on Gillware.com. It's not gated. So if you just Google for Gillware and like MSP or managed service provider buyer's guide, we put it together a list of 30-ish questions that you can interview your MSP. Because that's a problem. You're a real estate guy, you got to hire an IT guy, you have no idea what you're doing.
Tell us what MSP is again, or what this
managed service provider. So most Americans work at companies of, less than 50 employees, most of us. And all of us need IT help. None of us can afford to have a full-time employee as an IT guy. So the concept is managed service provider. There's probably 20,000 of them in the US that provide the IT. It's like a timeshare on an IT guy. You pay them like $1,000 a month. You get like a quarter of an IT guy, but then they also, if they're good ones, are helping you with your security decisions, helping you with your file sharing decisions, helping you with your backups, helping you audit those backups, helping you with your authentication doohickeys. So that's nice. MSP.
So how can they get in touch with you? Go ahead.
So again, if you Google, I'm on LinkedIn, so just, Brian Gill, Gillware on LinkedIn, I'll pop right up. You can connect with me. The MSP buyer's guide is up on Gillware.com. It's not gated. Just Google it, download it, use it. There's also a thing up on Gillware. It's like the 7 things you can do right now in like within 2 hours to dramatically improve your security. So there's a couple of free resources up there you can Google for. If you want to connect with me personally, it's Brian Gill from Gillware. Just Google that and I'll pop right up on LinkedIn.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by LifeBridge Capital. LifeBridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. LifeBridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.